Good morning again. Welcome. So glad you're here. My name's Ross. Welcome back to the dramatic conclusion of Love in Fall, the relationship series that we've been in for the last few weeks here. Next week, we'll be starting a brand new series that will take us up to and prepare for and actually through Christmas. It's the most wonderful time of the year. But here we are finishing this up for today. So I was in junior high, I believe, when The Simpsons started. If you are as old as I am, you may remember that it was considered pretty edgy, maybe even controversial, and my TV watching was very, very strictly regulated, so it was off limits for me, which was, of course, the worst possible thing. But I remember with surprising clarity and accuracy the first episode that I ever saw. I believe my dad and my sister were there. I think it was like a check it out to see if it will pass, and I'm sure it didn't. But I went back and I actually looked up some of the details because I wanted to be accurate, and it was all exactly as I remembered. It apparently was season 1, episode 9. And this is the episode where Marge has a birthday and Homer almost forgets. Not a good husband move. But luckily, he's able to recover, and I don't know, but maybe, I suspect there was a deleted scene in there where Reverend Lovejoy had his own relationship message where he preached from the direct and very wonderful, well-known words of Jesus, who said, "Do to others whatever you would like them to do to you." This is the essence of all that is taught in the law and the prophets. I think that Homer was there that day, and he was taking notes, because that is precisely what he did. He went and he got his wife a gift for her birthday, and it was exactly what he would want somebody to give to him. The exact application of the words of Jesus. He got her a bowling ball. And of course, Marge didn't bowl, never bowled, had no interest in bowling, but that's what Homer would want someone to give to him. And so this is what he did. In fact, he also got one that was the appropriate weight for him, which, again, exactly what he would want someone to give to him. Way too heavy for Marge, but he's following the words of Jesus. He, in fact, got the holes custom drilled, exactly perfect for his hand, and his fingers way too big for Marge. And he even went the extra mile and got a very, very thoughtful engraving in the ball, which was exactly what he would want for somebody to give it to him. It said Homer. And then he went and he gave this very, very thoughtful gift to his wife, Marge, which was the ball that had his name on it and the holes for his hand and the weight appropriate for his strength for the hobby that he was involved in and she didn't, as a very clear, wonderful application of the words of Jesus as regarding his marriage and his relationship. Well, in the episode, it almost backfires. Marge decides that she is, in fact, going to take up bowling, and so she starts taking lessons and almost gets into trouble with a dashing young bowling instructor before returning to her senses and the man who has demonstrated his thoughtfulness and Christ-likeness in giving her exactly what he would want somebody to give to him. I don't think the writers and producers intended that episode to be a Christian marriage tutorial, but you can see that's really very clearly what it was. Well, I hope this is all fun or funny, but it's obvious that that is not a recommended application of the words of Jesus, because we all know that it could be in a very, very superficial way, but we know that what one person wants is not necessarily the same as what another person may want. And that is never more clear than in our marriages or our relationships. And so I don't want to be here perpetuating harmful, outdated stereotypes, but in my and many other people's observations, there are often differences between men and women, husbands and wives, Homer and Marge, and they won't be in every situation exactly the same, right? All the sex or gender things are always about 80%, 20%. So if whatever, the point actually is to talk with your person and talk about your individuality. But we have noticed that there are some differences that tend to fall into certain trends, and we understand that on a certain level, but maybe we don't always understand really exactly where all this is coming from and why. And so to really take seriously the words of Jesus, I hope we all understand that doesn't mean that we always necessarily do to somebody else exactly what we would want somebody to do for us. It requires an additional and sometimes very obvious and even intuitive step that you do without even realizing it, of asking, well, what is it that they would want? Because that really is how we would do to somebody else what we want them to do to us, is to treat us with our own individuality and understanding, right? And so if that's what I would want, right, if I would like for my spouse to treat me not as they would like to be treated, but as I would like to be treated, the easy logical extension of that then is that I should treat my spouse as they would like to be treated and not as I would like to be treated necessarily. And so this could go a million different directions from here, but very simply, I think, for today, the way to stay in love is to learn to understand the person that you love. Okay, and this sounds so simple, but I think that can actually be exactly what is the catch sometimes. Out of The Simpsons, but a couple years ago, I read a book about biblical interpretation and understanding. And I don't really even like the phrase biblical interpretation, because sometimes I feel like that makes it sound like it can be just kind of like whatever I think or whatever it seems like to me, kind of like, I don't know, if you think that chocolate Frosties are better than vanilla, then I'm not sure you've really given vanilla a fair shake, but that's just like your opinion, man. But really what I think is better than interpretation is understanding, because the biblical authors were writing to communicate something, right, to the people who they were writing to. It wasn't just for people to kind of think, oh, all right, oh, maybe I kind of like this. They were trying to communicate something, but they weren't really writing, as much as it's directly applicable to us, they weren't writing directly to us 2,000 to 4,000 years later on the other side of the world. Like it wasn't even in English, right? It just wasn't. And so one of the things that the authors of this book made a major point of time and time again is saying that so often the most important things go unsaid, because most of the time they don't have to be said. They're understood. The people that they're writing to, like Paul's writing to the believers in the church that he started, right? And he knows these people, and they share the same situation and culture and even relationships. He's writing specifically to Timothy, who's a specific individual that they have a specific relationship with, right? And so I think a lot of times then the point that they were making is that we don't understand some of the things that are unsaid, and then even worse, we may fill in some of those with things that would go unsaid in our world, in our culture, and a lot of times they're very similar, but sometimes they can be very different, and then things get all kind of out of whack. Well, I think we all understand how that can happen with time and place and language and culture, but maybe don't think that that will happen to us with the person who we know and live with and share a life with. But as much as there are clever sayings about assumptions, here's the reality: is we all make 1,000 of them a day. There's no way you can get through life without doing it. And almost all of them will be unsaid but assumed and correct. A couple of them won't be. And you don't know which ones those will be. And so here's a little vignette from a book that I read that was written by a husband-wife a couple, and they talk about the homes that they grew up in. And the husband in this book, the home he grew up in, his father worked long hours. And so his mother, who did not work outside of the home, made sure to never ask him to do anything around the house, because that was one of the ways in which she showed her appreciation for his hard work and her love for him, and tried to make an equal contribution. And so the man saw this in his parents growing up, and the way that his mother showed her love to his father. Well, the woman that he married, the co-author of the book, her home was very different. Because when she was still just a very young girl, her mother had a stroke that left her partially incapacitated. And so her father showed his love for his wife by stepping up and doing happily and without being asked 1,000 different things that might not even have necessarily been typical for a husband in that kind of generation. And so she's growing up and she sees this and the way in which her dad shows his love for her husband. Well, these two people get married. Eventually, they have a baby. And that means one of the things that means is changing diapers, and a lot. Nobody likes changing diapers. But it's not really that big of a deal, right? Like, you can work that out. Any couple that can communicate will be able to make this happen. It's just basic household division of labor, right? And it's not even that emotional, but man, somehow it really was difficult. Somehow it really was very hard. And in fact, it became very, very emotional, like a lot more emotional than changing diapers seems like it really should be, which is always an indication that if somebody's response to something is disproportionate to the something, that there's something else going on there, that maybe we just don't know what it is or don't understand what it is. And so here's what they eventually understood what was happening is when he didn't want to change a diaper, what went on sort of semi-consciously in her mind was, well, if he loved me like my dad loved my mom, he would just change the stupid diaper. What, does he not really love me? Meanwhile, what was going on semi-consciously in his mind when he was being asked to change a diaper was, if she loved me like my mom loved my dad, she wouldn't even ask me to do something like that. Does she not appreciate my hard work? Does she not really love me? And luckily, they were just healthy enough to know that, no, like, of course they loved each other. And eventually, they were able to talk this out and understand what was going on in the mind of the other one, unsaid but assumed, and that they were very, very different. In fact, effectively opposite. And the way that they expected to be treated or wanted to be treated was very different from what the other one was expecting or wanting. I read a different book. It said that a woman's number one complaint generally in a relationship is, I don't feel heard. And I think this is kind of hilarious that generally men misunderstand that. Because, right, fellas, we're like, we know exactly how to respond to this. She says, I don't feel heard. And we say, no, I heard you. I'm listening. And then we repeat back exactly what she said to demonstrate that we were listening and she was heard. That's usually not what that means. Could really be much better expanded on by saying, what I need is for you to demonstrate that you care about what I'm feeling and that you're interested in what I have to say. Actually, Laura once, many, many years ago, said this sort of by saying, Ross, will you listen with your eyes? And she kind of had to say that because I was very much, like I had said exactly that. She'd say, Ross, listen to me. Like, oh no, I'm listening. You said exactly this, and repeat back exactly what she said. But that wasn't really what she meant. That wasn't really what she wanted, and we didn't even understand what was going on inside the other person, and so we did not know how to treat each other. A couple more fun examples. You'll maybe like these. Maybe, and if the gender thing, again, is if you don't like you feel like you're more of the 20 than the 80, just talk about this with whoever it is that you have trouble communicating with or getting to do. But she says, we never go out anymore. There's a pretty good chance that what she really means by this, here's what's really going on, is I love spending time with you. Can we do something together soon? Which any man would love to hear and respond very, very positively to. But if what's said is we never go out anymore, there's a good chance that here's his interpretation of that is you're boring and unromantic, you're failing at making me happy. That's the opposite of what is in fact being attempted to be communicated, right? If she says the house is such a mess, okay, maybe this is what this really means is that I'm frustrated, I'm overwhelmed, I need a rest. Like, I hope you don't expect me to do this all by myself. Can you just agree with me and say, yes, you know what, the house is a mess, and then we'll work on this together. Now, the man's not going to be quite as happy to hear that, but probably he'll go with it. You know what, you work together for 15 minutes, you can do a lot. You get a lot done and make a lot of things better, except if what's heard is just the house is such a mess, there's a pretty good chance that that's going to be heard by the husband as, well, you're messy and lazy. Not at all what she's trying to say. And now, in fact, there's a problem between the two of them that isn't even the problem used to just be that the house is a mess. Now the house is still a mess, and there's some difficulty going on between the two of them. Now, it's the same the other way, because not always, but very typically, women tend to process and problem solve by by talking through, whereas men, not always, but very typically, tend to process and problem solve by thinking through. These are opposite, right? And absolutely, this is not the case for everybody, but it's completely the case for Laura and myself, that's for sure. So something's wrong, she can tell something's wrong, she says, what's wrong? He says, nothing's wrong. Okay. Here's probably what that really means, is it's nothing that I want to talk about right now, because I think through, right? So please don't ask me any more questions about it. Well, to someone who talks through, nothing's wrong means something very different. That means, well, I don't know what's wrong, so I need you to help me by asking questions to talk through and find the problem. That's the opposite. That's not going to go well. That's exactly what he does not want that went assumed but unsaid, of course, because he doesn't want to say anything. A little similarly, like, don't worry about it. It's not a problem. Well, there's obviously a problem, but here's really probably what that means is, okay, yes, I know there's a problem, but it's mine to deal with. It's not your fault. I'm not mad at you. Don't worry about it. I've worked all sorts of things out over the past however many years I've been alive. I'll get this worked out also. Just don't worry about it. Well, I don't know. If you're more prone to talk through than think through, maybe you think, well, since there's not a problem, there's clearly a problem, and so something needs to change. You're upset. Here, let me explain this to you. And that's, again, not going to go well. And here's what's going on, is you're both buying each other a bowling ball. And neither of you realizes it, right? You're doing to the other person what you would want the other person to do to you, but what will really be effective is if you do to the other person what they would want done to them instead. Just for fun, here's what happens a lot of the time, right? We talked about this actually last week. If there's a sort of situation going on, is a lot of time the man tends to withdraw, right? You grab your keys, just go for a drive. Go down to the basement, watch TV. Just sit there in silence. Some form or another of push away, right? Just give me some space. Just push away. Just push away. What's a woman tend to do? Again, none of these are all the time for everybody, but come here. Right? It's the exact difference, it's the exact opposite. And most of the time, what's going on, again, unsaid but assumed and misunderstood, is the man thinking, okay, I just need some time and some space to think through, right? Get this settled, let my emotions come down so I don't say something stupid. This is for the good of the relationship that I value. Well, very likely the woman or a person who talks through is thinking, there's a situation, and so we need to get this worked through right here, right now. Will you please work through this with me so that I can see that you value the relationship? What they really want is the same thing. They're going about it in opposite ways because they're different people. And when this is assumed but unsaid, then it is misunderstood, and people understand the exact opposite, right? I don't know how to tell anybody or any couple exactly how to change their behavior based on any of this, because again, everybody is a unique individual, but we can say this for sure. If you understand your spouse or partner or whoever it is, your boss or employee or person on the street or cashier, like you apply this to whatever you want, it will go better the more you understand the person. Ladies, a man withdrawing does not mean they don't value the relationship. I know if you did it, probably that would be a really bad sign. That would mean that you are kind of giving up. You're considering like this might not even be worth it, but he's doing it because he does value the relationship. Fellas, really the best thing you can probably do is just say, just as simply as it can be, look, I love you. We're going to get through this. I just can't right now. If you know me, left to my own devices, My standard of cleanliness is, I don't think I'm a slob, but it is probably below what you would find in Better Homes and Gardens magazine, if that's still a thing. I know that the dishes need to be done. I don't know that they need to be done right now. I know that my clothes need to be washed and clean. I don't know that once that's done, I need to take them from the basket, open the sock drawer, put them in the sock drawer, close the sock drawer so that when I need to get them, then I, again, open the drawer, grab them, close the door. I don't feel like I need that practice opening and closing drawers. I know you have to kind of pull from both sides or it gets, but like I'm just as I'll just take them out of the basket and save steps. Well, I can come home if the kitchen's a mess, pretty good chance I don't even notice. Probably for the good of everybody, Laura is not like me. Laura has some higher standards for cleanliness, again, as is typical for, whatever, a male-female situation. And specifically, the kitchen. And I remember decades ago, she explained this to me, and I'm so glad she did. And she wasn't angry, she wasn't frustrated, but she just explained some things that were assumed or unsaid to help understand. She said, Ross, when I come home, if the house is a mess, or specifically if the kitchen isn't clean, maybe it isn't reasonable, maybe it isn't rational, but here's what happens to me is I just feel now like there are more things that need to be done, and I can't just relax. If the kitchen's a mess, then coming home, it isn't a safe retreat from a hard, stressful day. It's just more things that I have to deal with. Well, of course, ever since then, it's certainly not without fail, but I've tried to really make it a point to have a clean kitchen. If I'm making dinner, then I'm going to be making my own dishes, but I'll at least try and make sure that the ones from yesterday are put away and the counter's wiped off. If she's coming back from a couple of days away, I'm definitely going to make sure that the kitchen's clean. But I needed her to tell me. And I'm so glad that she did, because I would never, ever have figured this out on my own. I never would have drawn a correlation between the stress level of my wife, which I may or may not even be able to observe, and the cleanliness of the kitchen, which I'm extremely unlikely to observe, right? And it's just a matter of, like, she didn't want a bowling ball. Like, she just wanted a clean kitchen. And if I was doing for her what I would want her to do for me, right? If I thought about what I wanted to come home to and what would really be nice, I have decided to redact this joke. But she just wanted a clean kitchen. I promise you that was funny. Basic idea. We've seen some amazing biblical things. I guess if you didn't laugh, it wasn't funny. So whatever, objective, subjective, this is going to go off the rails. We've seen some very, very wonderful, amazing things in this series, specifically about marriage. Again, most of this can apply to any situation, any relationship you want. But we've said that, you know what? In a marriage, you're no longer two but one. You're joined. You are now together. You're the same. It's true. But you are not now identical. And so the way to really apply the words of Jesus is not to do to the other as you would like them to do to you. It's to do to the other as they would like for you to do to them. And the simplest, easy solution for all of this is when you just talk. Really, will you just do that? Will you just talk? The assumptions that are unsaid, you probably have a pretty good idea, if you've been married or if you're married, where some of these misunderstandings or ships passing in the night are happening. Just talk. And this is so helpful. Like, if Laura would have said, I just like a clean kitchen, like okay, well, she likes a clean kitchen. It was so helpful that she didn't just say what, but that she said why and that she explained. Okay, well, I don't really understand, but now I can kind of understand. That's so much more meaningful, and now I'm so much more likely to take action on that. And by the way, guess what? I did it because I want to be a good husband, as it turns out, which guess what? I'll bet every man in here wants to be a good husband. Sometimes you just don't know how, right? So you talk and you say not just why, but say what. If you have a question, simple as that. Something you don't understand, ask. The answer might be very, very different than you thought. Laura and I have been married for 26 years. We're still learning about each other. And then treat them the way that they want to be treated, not the way that you would want to be treated. Series recap. Basically what we all, if we don't think about it, what we're really looking for in our love life is meet the right person, fall in love, live happily ever after, right? Every one of those can be improved upon. Don't try to meet the right person. Work to become the right person. Cooperate with God to step into and grow into the person who He created you to be. Not only do you grow, but you now become more likely to be the right person for the person who you think is the right person. That's good. Fall in love. Don't fall in love. Choose love. Love is not a feeling that can come and go or fall in and out of. It's the decision to make the choice to do the loving thing regardless of what you do or don't feel at any given moment. And then there's no happily ever after because you're still two broken, sinful people. Things are going to go wrong. So that doesn't mean you got the wrong person. Go back to number one. It means forgive, right? As God through Christ has forgiven you. If you remember that particularly pointed portion of that message. And then last week, what did we say? Set some basic, understood, mutually agreed upon rules of engagement so that you're not going to hurt the wrong person, which is your spouse, which means you're hurting yourself and both of you. Don't fire on your spouse. No personal attacks, and whatever other helpful rules to help you work together and be partners and teammates, not adversaries, and working through whatever needs to be worked through. And then, of course, this for today, that we will follow the words of Jesus and put them into our marriages and our relationships by treating our spouse not as we would want to be treated, but as they would want to be treated, which is so much more helpful. And when we do these, you guys, we will be absolutely set for still flawed and difficult, but tremendously fulfilling and healthy relationships that will be satisfying for you and display the glory of God in the way that Christ loves the church, as that's reflected in our marriages and our relationships. Isn't that good? That's what every one of us wants, right? Let's take it out of the message, off of the screen, and put it into our lives. New series starting next week. All right, let's pray, you guys. Father, thank you so much. That although they can be very, very difficult, that the steps and keys to improving the relationships, to make them more of what we would want and more of what you would want them to be and more reflective of you and your relationship with us, are not hidden, they're not secret, they're difficult, but they're not complicated, and they're right here for us. And still praying, if you're here today and you hear about things like the relationship between Christ and ourselves, and that's not something that you've experienced for yourself. It's a very simple situation where every one of us, we know that there have been things that were wrong. We did them anyway. That's sin. And God, as the just judge, cannot just pretend or look the other way, pretend something that was wrong didn't happen. That would make him a horrible, unjust judge. That would be terrible. But there's no way that we as a created human being can satisfy justice for the infinite, eternal God. But that's why Jesus came, lived a sinless life, and died in our place. That was him taking the punishment to satisfy justice for our wrongdoing, for your wrongdoing. And he takes our sinfulness, we receive his righteousness, and we are now forgiven before God. Listen, if you want that to be you, just right where you sit, you can say out loud or just speak in your heart to God. Say, God, I believe that Jesus Christ came and died and resurrected so that I could be forgiven and adopted as a child in your family forever. Please come into my life. Forgive me and adopt me. Begin to make me into the person you created me to be, and give me the life that you have for me. If you just Prayed a prayer like that for the first time. It's not the words or the prayer that saves you. It's nothing that you do other than your faith in Jesus. That's where God's grace comes to you through, and you are a brand new spiritual creation in him. If that's you, just let somebody know. If there's a friend who brought you, or you can talk to the person at the point that's just the corner in the lobby. They'll take your information. We'll be able to follow up with you with some good, healthy next steps toward living the life that God has for you. For the rest of us, whatever situation we're in, married or not married or single or 12 years old, there are relationships in our lives that sometimes struggle. Will you commit between yourself and the Spirit of God to take what we've heard both today in this message and in this series and commit them to use, to following through and living the life that he has for you and seeing him expressed and glorified in our interpersonal relationships, just between yourself and the Spirit of God? Will you make that commitment that whatever probably specific piece of that he is speaking to you, that you will respond and cooperate with the Spirit of the God who loves you in making you more of who he created you to be? And Father, we are so grateful for those opportunities, for the people around us, whoever they may be, that we can glorify you and live our lives in the best way possible through the information and the helpfulness that you have provided for us, that we may reflect you for your glory in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Hey, LifePoint, I'm Melissa,